So what issues are you passionate about? Both of you serve different communities here at Lamar University, but you also have personal passions. Could you share some of those with us?
Sure. So for me, I mean, working in this current position in higher education, definitely making higher education affordable and accessible to students is something that I'm really passionate about, especially those that are in underserved populations, primarily the disability community. I'm a pretty strong disability advocate, having a disability myself. So I really like to focus on things like accessibility and inclusion in higher education. I have a particular interest in universal design. And then amongst other issues, I'm a former wheelchair athlete, so I definitely have a passion for promoting and endorsing adaptive athletics.
That's great. So for me, my passion lies in health. I am a social epidemiologist, so I am interested in everything health related and advancing public health, and in particular COVID-19, because I myself felt ill severely with COVID-19 and have long-term COVID. So I have been advocating for people who have been suffering now going on a year with COVID. So I'm everything health. You will see me at Lamar doing everything about health and advancing health in across different populations.
Thank you guys both. I'm sure there's plenty of people in our audience that are probably like, whoa, that's really cool. How do I get into that career field or follow those passions? And so as a woman, I know I've dealt with this personally of, not being encouraged to follow certain dreams or, have certain majors. And so how do you deal with the stereotypes of pursuing a career in health or pursuing a career in athletics as a athlete and things like that?
That's a really great question, Reba. And I think that, there are a lot of obstacles and barriers for any human being trying to reach their goals. I know for me personally, not only, obstacles based upon my gender, but, also having a disability. And so when you talk about education or career, it's been a lifelong journey and struggle for me in terms of things like access and inclusion, making sure that things were equitable or equal for me. I remember early on, even in elementary education, fighting to be included with my classmates in activities at the school. So for me, I'm pretty used to fighting those types of battles. I've learned to become a really strong self-advocate for myself and learn how to speak up for myself about things so that I am able to have the opportunities that I do. And I try to focus on the positive aspects of life. And so, having a disability, in my opinion, is an asset. It's a strength that I have, and it definitely enhances the opportunities that I've been given, including my education and my career. So for me, it's a constant process of educating, trying to help others understand where I'm coming from, and then also helping to speak up for those that aren't able to or don't have the capacity to speak up for themselves, maybe just yet. And so I think for me, it's just sort of an ongoing thing, and I take a lot of pride in it, and I want to just help as many people as I can in the process.
Okay, so for me, I believe that the only limits that you have are within your mind. So you can go and do whatever it is you are motivated to do. You just got to go and do it. And if obstacles are placed in your way, which there are, because that's how the world works. If it was easy, then everybody would be on top. It's not, but it's the people who persevere and keep going who make it. And I believe it was Shirley Chisholm who said, if they don't make a seat for you at the table, bring your own chair. And I really think that that is something that you should live by.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great quote about bringing your own chair to the table. Especially in Women's History Month. We know that there's not always a table or representation for us. And so, yeah, that's a great quote. Thanks for sharing that. And so on that kind of line of dealing with life and life happens, how do you balance, your career and family and a social life and, getting higher education and things like that?
Well, as we're all experiencing in this global pandemic, it is not easy to find balance, but nonetheless, we persevere, right? So, I think for me, just in terms of career and family, I'm sort of blessed because my husband also works here at Lamar University. So he's the director of our Disability Resource Center, for those of you that don't know Kyle. So that helps, being married to someone who also works in higher education and understands the unique challenges that we do. We have a lot in common in that way. So that definitely brings us closer together. And I think right now, given that we're not able to do the things that maybe we normally love to do, or we can't get out as much as we'd like, or travel, we love to travel, and that's just not possible right now. So what we find that brings us to closer together is opportunities to serve. So we've been trying to get more involved with our community and just giving back where we can. We all know that we've encountered a lot of challenges here locally, and so just being able to help others that maybe are not doing as well or not in a position to help themselves. So just being able to give back and serve others. That's really what's kind of fueled me this past year, because I too also had COVID back in the summer, and it was definitely not fun at all. And so just trying to help people that are, trying to get back on their feet, so to speak. So opportunities for service for me.
So for me, I am a married woman with 2 young daughters, and I do not believe that a woman with children who's a working mother has like any type of balance in life. It's very hard. And as the speaker who just spoke before me, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, just said, having a supportive spouse is very important. I will be completely open and honest with you with that. If you are a working woman and you are a go-getter type of woman, you are going to need the support of your spouse. And if you are on your own, you're going to have to pay to get the help that a spouse provides, a helpful spouse provides. And that is just part of being a woman. I don't really care what anybody says. It is what it is. Men do not have to go through that like women do. Women they go out and they work, they come home and they work. Men go out and they work, they don't necessarily come home and work. And if they do work, it is not at the same level as what a woman does. Even if you think that it's 50-50 or whatever, it's not. So because especially with children, the first person that they typically want to come to is the mother for something. So you will just learn how to navigate that as you become a parent, if you're a working parent. So for those of you who don't have children, I would say try to get as far as you can in your career while you don't have children before you decide to take the leap. And make sure your spouse is supportive. Like talk about that, negotiate that beforehand. Very important.
Yeah, definitely. One of our comments said, preach, new mom here, and have only been a mom for 6 months. So you got some supporters in the comments. And then we have a question. Are there any specific ways that I can support my significant other to achieve their goals?
Well, if your significant other is ask them what they need. What can I do to help you? Not telling them what you want to do. Ask them how they can help, how you can be of service to them so that they can do whatever they need to do. That's the best way to provide support.
Yeah. And to second that, so I got married 2 years ago, and it was a conversation I had before I jumped into marriage with my husband of, hey, I'm very career focused and driven. And so recognizing that in yourself, and making sure you you have that conversation preemptively so they also know what they're getting into. I think it's important. Yeah, communication, definitely.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, absolutely, communication is essential in any relationship, be it a marital relationship or not. And that is definitely, and I agree, Margot, what you were saying about, really listening to your spouse and, what is it that they, what do they need, what is their goal and what are they trying to achieve, and then just trying to be as supportive as you can on that. And yeah, definitely agree with you both.
So our next moderated question is, what issues don't get talked about enough or addressed? So are there any issues that kind of stick out to you that don't get talked about enough?
I'll try not to step on my soapbox for too long. There's definitely issues that don't get talked about or addressed enough. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that in our society now. But one issue that I'm very passionate about is disability rights and inclusion. And so I think a lot of people are familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And people understand that that's a law that protects people with disabilities. But I think sometimes they don't see how the laws actually can protect the non-disabled community, especially on the commercial or business side of things. A lot of times you'll hear businesses say, well, I'm compliant, so I don't need to do anything else. I've met the requirements of this law. But I think it's better to look at something and say, like, well, how can we make this available or accessible to everyone? Or how can we modify it to benefit the largest audience? So, that's where universal design is so wonderful, because it takes a look at things like equity and flexibility and simplicity. So trying to make things just from the start, available and accessible to the most people possible. And I think technologically speaking, we have more people have access to higher education than ever before. But a good question that we can ask is, are we creating a welcoming, inclusive environment once they get here? So that's definitely something that's on my radar. And, I like to help support those efforts here at Lamar University, trying to help the students have the most inclusive, equitable experience possible.
It's great. So I think one of our biggest issues, especially during Women's History Month, is inequality in pay between the sexes. Women get paid less than men, period. White women, it goes like white women, African American women, Latinas in terms of pay gap. And that's a problem. And it's a problem across all areas of employment. Even in academics, you see it here. Even at Lamar, you see it here. And it needs to stop. It needs to close. And so for the students listening, when you get your first job, that's going to happen to you too. So it's important to negotiate when you get your first job so that at least you can try to close the gap, but it's going to be very difficult. So that's a big problem that I think needs to be addressed, because the fact is women are expected to do the same job as a man. When you hire for a position, it's not like a differences between sexes. So they expect you to do the same job, but you get paid less as compared to a man, and you're expected to perform at the same rate as a man, even though you have more duties than a guy, because you're also, have the home care and things of that nature much more often than a male. We also have the pink tax, which means that women pay more for different feminine products or women focused products. So our products are more expensive, yet we get paid less. During COVID-19, women, but in particular, African-American women and Latina women, lost their jobs at alarming rates. So a lot of these women are often heads of households. So can you imagine what that's doing to this population, this group of women. So those are things that we need to address. So two other ones I would say is that, along with the pink tax, women in the military, for example, pay 10 times more for mandatory uniform items as compared to their male counterparts. And even something along the lines of safety in cars, because cars are designed seat belts with men in mind, with male crash dummies. So women are more often than men. Men are more often involved in car crashes, but women will either be seriously injured or killed at a higher rate as males, because the cars and the seat belts are designed for men. And even something as simple as our office, there was a Dutch study that examined the metabolic rate of men versus women. Even office temperature levels are designed with men in mind. So these are type of things that we need to break down and change. So not just talking about the great things that women have done and contribute to society, but also taking action to actually close that gap is needed.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's something that I've been dealing with over the past couple months, is researching the parental leave policies and how that affects women and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, for our students that are looking for their first jobs, make sure that you're paying attention to your company's policies regarding pay and equity and parental leave, and how a lot of the times it's not guaranteed. So yeah, just be aware. And when we are in places that can make change and enact change and serve on committees that actually, have power to change things, make sure our voice is represented and we bring our chair to the table. So we do have a question in the chat, so I'll read it aloud. A big conversation people have is often how there are not a lot of women in STEM, but a lot of science-based fields are ran by women, like nursing, but they often feel left out of the world of STEM or even science, or are seen as less than. How do we change that perspective?
That's a great question, Ashton. And, as a pre-nursing advisor, I work with nursing students every day. And so, in my mind, yeah, y'all are included in STEM. Obviously, hello. But I agree with you. There's definitely a lack of representation of women in the field of STEM just across the board. We know that nursing is a popular field for women, but, still, there's always opportunity to be more inclusive and improve that. So as far as changing perspectives, I think that's just a continuous education of, what does it take? What are the opportunities? How do we adequately prepare women to go into the fields? What type of educational opportunities can we present to them and offer to them? But on a personal side, I think what we can do individually is continue to reach out. I'm a huge proponent of mentorship. As you may or may not be aware, with our nursing program, there's a huge component of mentorship in that program. And as a pre-nursing student, students can engage with nursing students and vice versa. So I think finding a mentor is a good step in the right direction. Really learning from the women that went before you. How did they do it? How did they break into it? And then, kind of like what we were talking about before, advocating, getting involved in the process of providing more opportunities, more funding, whether that be legislatively, writing letters to your senators and your legislators to advocate for more opportunities for that, talking to your school, if there's not a program for you, advocating that one be created. So it's definitely a work in progress, and we definitely need all you young women to get involved as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. That sums it up. She touched on mentorship, and not just a mentor, but needing an advocate. I absolutely agree with her on those things. I have nothing to add.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of my favorite questions in just talking to everyday women is, how do you support other women?
Margot, do you want to go first on that one?
Me? Okay, sure. First of all, I'm raising two little women, so we are all about girl boss and all those types of things. And I started the Girl Lab in order to advocate for students and get them into research opportunities. We've had two women who have successfully gone through that and won the McNair Fellowship, both of them. One went to Harvard to present her research and won prize money for her research, $300, I believe she won. So everything I do, it doesn't matter. It's about what's best for women, because I am a walking role model now that I'm a mother of two daughters. And so I have all of my work also has a component where I look specifically with women. While I was really sick with COVID, I started a group for women with long COVID, and that was featured in the Washington Post and the New York Times for my work. I was named one of the 7 women unsung heroes for other of women my work with long COVID. So I'm a person who believes in human rights. I'm an advocate by nature. So it's really embedded in everything that I do.
That's awesome. And this is like kind of my response to that is, celebrating with other women the accomplishments that they've made. And so that's amazing. Like that is really, I'm really encouraged just by you sharing your story about that. That's really exciting and awesome and very much needed, right? We need as much support as we can. We need to support each other. So I agree with that. And I would say, kind of going back to what I was touching on before is, being a mentor. I've always offered that opportunity to any of the students that I've worked with. I said, even when you get into the nursing program, like if you need something, reach out to me, let me know. I'm not a nurse by profession, but I've been a college student. I'm working professional. I know what the challenges that can come up. So I think just offering your time and your wisdom, and then celebrating with other women when they meet their accomplishments is really important. And just interacting with women from a variety of backgrounds. That's how you learn. That's how you learn about the world. Everyone has a personal story. Everyone has an experience, and the more we can learn from one another, the better off we'll be.
And not tearing each other down, because that's what women used to do back in the old days, and we don't need to do that anymore. So I think women empowering women is needs to be number one, and we need to get used to that's what we do, because no one can be you. So just remember that as you're going through your studies, you are so special. So it doesn't matter if you help the next person or your buddy, because they are them and you are you, and you both have something to provide and to give to the world.
Amen.
All right, we'll pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions. You can put them in the chat. Does anybody in person have questions for our panel? Want to know anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Typically, I seek advice and strength from writers, different women writers. I was curious, it doesn't have to be a writer, if there's any role models that either of you seek strength from, and that could be in the past history or current.
So the question is, do you have anyone that you seek strength or like a role model from the past history, or they could be a current leader that you read or that you follow?
I can jump in on that. There are so many for me, but I really love Eleanor Roosevelt because she is the reason that we have human rights. So I love everything that has to do with her. I don't think a lot of people know this, but one of the reasons that we have GPS is because of an Albert Einstein, of course, and an African-American woman as well. And then as far as role models nowadays, I mean, we have a woman vice president. How awesome is that? And then she happens to like be an immigrant, and like she ticks so many boxes. It's quite lovely. So I think that that's great to see how her career went. But what I do, and this is personal advice, what I would like to share with you guys as students, is I always like to look for other women to like form my tribe with, who are a little bit ahead of me in their career, because you can learn so much from them. And people, you'll be surprised how kind people are with that. So make sure you get to know your professors, and don't be afraid to have a conversation with them. Don't just wait until the end of the semester when your grades are due. But that's the kind of things that will help you grow as a person, and will be good for you in your, in your next step as you graduate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like not being afraid to ask questions is huge, because that's how you learn. And, there's always going to be somebody that knows something that you don't, and that's why any question is a valid question. And I agree. I've had a lot of, being a wheelchair athlete, a lot of my role models have been other athletes, other women, especially, and just, working with them and asking them questions about like, well, how did you do this? How did you meet your goal? Or what did it take for you to, step up your game? And so, I've had a lot of women that I've looked up to over the years too. And I guess like famous women, or I don't know, historical women. There's a woman by the name of Judy Heumann, and she's a disability rights advocate. She worked in Washington. She's had several various leadership roles, and she's recently published a memoir called Being Human, and I highly recommend it. She's just an incredible woman, and has done a lot to change the course of history. So.
Anybody else have a question before we move on? Awesome. One of our final questions is something that you've both hinted on throughout this entire panel, but it's about what advice do you have for younger women? So if you could just give us a little spiel about what advice you would have.
You want to go first, or you want me to take it? My advice to young women is to be yourself, and don't feel pressured to be something that you're not. And we get judged often on our appearances, and we're always busy with that, and we spend so much money on our appearance. Save a little bit of that money. and be yourself is what I would say. And don't feel that you have to make yourself smaller or suppress your motivation in order to make the guy in the room feel more comfortable with you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. And then I would also say, to add to that, you have your own experiences. Only you know what it's like to truly be you. So don't discredit or devalue those experiences. Learn from them, grow from them. I'm a big proponent of speaking up for yourself. Learn to self-advocate. If you don't know how to do that, or maybe you're feeling intimidated about something, find someone who you trust, who can help you develop those skills, communication skills, decision-making skills, organization skills, that type of thing. But don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions, because you never know. I can remember times in my life when I was in college that I wished I would have spoken up, or asked the question, or raised the issue, or whatever it was, because there's somebody else that could benefit from that. So you never know what other people are going through, and by you asking or raising the question or issue could definitely help out another person. So don't forget to speak up, and then don't give up. That's a huge thing too. It's so easy in this world to just say like, I give up, it's too hard, I'm not going to do it. Don't give up, because it'll be so much worth it in the end when you can look back and say like, I did that, I accomplished that. So if you feel like giving up, if there's something that you're kind of on the fence about, find someone who can just kind of be your cheerleader and keep you going, because if it's worth it to you, there's a way to do it.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, I think that's great. Because I can't see you guys. I can only see Jenny. So I don't know if this is an all women audience or if there's males here. I don't know. But if there are guys here, what I would like to say is that it's also achieving gender equality. It's also some of you guys' responsibility as well. So remember that when you advance into that leadership role, guys, that you realize that and you be kind and you hire women and you respect women and you don't speak over women and you don't re-explain something that a woman just said. And when you do go off and get married, if you marry a woman, help her out without giving her grief because she's working hard as well. So it takes two in order to truly achieve this gender equality that we're searching for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we do have young men in the audience, so that's great advice also for them. Yeah, and Jenny, you mentioned about having your cheerleader, and sometimes those are going to be older women in your life, but also I've had a couple professors or bosses who were men who were champions for women who really made the difference in me becoming a leader and, learning that voice, that inner voice to do positive self-talk and stuff like that and being encouragers of that. So thank you both for those notes. Those are important things to remember. We do have a question in the chat. So from Cindy, she asked, what were components of schooling or outside of school that kept you oriented and focused? Were there any organizations that you joined?
Well, when I was in school, I was also in sports. And so I think sports is what kept me oriented and focused because I had to maintain a certain GPA just to keep doing those sports. So extracurriculars are very essential as long as they don't overtake your academics, right? Like you have to find that healthy balance. There are a lot of organizations to get involved with as a student. If you're not already involved in something on campus, do it. It's totally worth it. You'll form lifelong friendships through those activities. And those are those things that will help keep you oriented and focused. And so again, the idea of college or university is we're a community, right? So yeah, you might be on an individual journey with your degree plan and your career path, but you are not alone by any stretch of the imagination. And so there are ample opportunities to get involved. Reba can talk a lot about that. Star Services has a ton of things that you can get involved with. But for me personally, it was really my engagement with sports. I also was a student with a disability, so I had our Disability Resource Center as a guide. A lot of times if I was having any challenges academically, I would utilize them for supports. So. Mm-hmm.
So for me, I absolutely agree with everything Jamie just said. And I would just like to add with it, set goals and then go for it and like visualize your goals. And something else I would say, I've forgotten what I wanted to say, but setting goals is a big thing. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Don't use drugs. Drugs will totally mess you up. So stay off of hard drugs, but then also like the legal drugs, like the pharmaceuticals like that, it'll totally wipe out your ability to really be a contributing member of society.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I was going to say, I agree with that because it might solve your issue or your pain in the temporary, but long term it could have detrimental consequences. So I definitely agree with that. You want to be clear focused and clear headed, and that's how you become successful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, one thing,
self-care also.
Yes.
Clear, because you're talking about clear focus, clear headed. Self-care is really important, and learning and setting boundaries and learning how to say no. That's very, very important. It's a hard thing for women to do.
Definitely. Also, one thing sorry, Jenny.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, yes, I totally agree with that statement about learning to say no. I just turned 39 and I'm still learning that. I'm just now learning that skill set. So, it is definitely not something that's easy to master, especially, wanting to be a helper or wanting to, be a people pleaser. You have to learn to set healthy boundaries, and it's totally okay to say no. There's just going to be times in your life where you just can't do everything, and nobody expects you to anyways. Usually that's a self-expectation. So being able to set those boundaries and opt out, as I like to say, of certain things is completely acceptable.
Yeah. And so also, when I first got my first professional position, something that really helped me was joining our professional association. And then also, most associations have a women's coalition or something like that, where you can meet other women in your field. And so I would definitely encourage, when you get that first professional job, look for those connections, because it can make a difference. And it helps you build that tribe that Dr. Gage was talking about, of finding women that have the job that you want one day. So yeah, building your tribe that way. We have one last question in the chat before we run out of time today. But yeah, this is something from Shelby. She asked, how do you deal with people saying you're too ambitious as a woman, or people who try to block your path? And she says, I usually don't care what people say, but that can be hurtful and hard to ignore when it's your family or your employers who refuse to allow you to show what you can do.
That's an excellent point, and definitely not an easy thing to reconcile. But I think, when you have a goal for yourself, or you have something that you are trying to achieve or accomplish, I don't think anybody can stop you. So, as far as like people saying you're too ambitious, or, that kind of thing, I don't know if there is such a thing, right? Because everybody is on their own trajectory. So you get to decide what it is that you want to accomplish. It can be very hurtful if it's coming from family or people close to you. So, again, learn to set those boundaries, learning what you'll accept, and then learning how to speak up for yourself is critical. So, and just, hold it in your mind, like, you don't have to justify yourself to anybody, as long as you're okay with you and what you're doing, then that's you. So I would say that, just learning to accept your worth and recognize your worth, and then speaking up when you feel like it's necessary to do that.
Just keep this in mind. If somebody tells you that you're too ambitious, I doubt that they would say that to a man, and they would probably call him a go-getter. They would probably call him a great leader. So just roll your eyes and keep moving, and laugh all the way to the bank as you are sitting in your corner office.